Hello and welcome to DianneRichardsonCraft. This is the first time I'm going to be posting some of my makes using the delicious new catalogue that's recently been published and come out from Stampin' Up. I've decided that I'm going to work with the Sailing Home stamp set. I absolutely love the ocean, so anything that is sea and ocean related has amazing appeal for me. In addition to the stamp set, I'm going to be working with the embossing folder called High Seas, and so that I don't have to do all the cutting out manually, I'm also going to be working with the smooth sailing dies. What I've done to make life a little easier is I have already pre-cut some of the paper that I will be using, and I will be sharing the measurements with you as we go along to make this card. The two colors, or the two primary colors I'm working with tonight, are going to be Sahara Sand and Balmy Blue. Don't you think that this is actually just a striking combination? And with this beautiful suite of products, Stampin' Up have also brought out a range of designer series papers, which is called the Come Sail Away designer series paper. And I just want to show you a few of the samples. You can see it is a beautiful combination of greens, dark midnight blue. There's black, or even, I suppose, a charcoal effect. The brown combinations. And the designs on these are so versatile. I think they are brilliant also if you're thinking of making any of the cards for Father's Day. I know Father's Day is not that far away, and not everybody has had time to make their Father's Day cards yet. So we'll be using some of that designer paper as well. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take one A4 sheet of card, and we're going to cut this in half at 14.8 centimeters. So if I lay that card flat like that, it's 14.8 centimeters from the left to the point at which I actually cut. Make sure once you've actually cut the one piece that you measure the second and absolutely have that one 14.8 centimeters as well, so that they are absolutely flush when you hold them together. Then take each of these pieces and score them down the middle. Given that this is 21 centimeters in length, you need to score down the middle at 10.5 centimeters. And if I'm going a little bit too quickly with the measurements, don't be concerned, because I am going to share a little instruction sheet just now where you'll be able to pick up the measurements again. So having scored both these pieces of card now down the middle, I'm going to take my bone folder, and if you haven't crafted before and you don't know what a bone folder is, this is the tool that I'm actually using now. And I like using my bone folder because I find it helps give me a really good line that doesn't crease. If I try and fold this by hand, I invariably end up actually with a skew line down the one edge. So I'm going to fold both of these in half on that score line, and I'm just using the bone folder to make sure that I've actually got those lines in place. Then what I'm going to do is I'm working with some liquid glue tonight. Sometimes it's useful to use a roller tape glue or double-sided tape, but this is going to work really well because I want to work quite quickly. So you don't need much of this, and you just spread it on the one half, and then take the other half and don't line it up on the score line. Offset it just ever so slightly to the right hand side of that score line. I hope you can actually see that on the video. It might not be very noticeable, so I will pick this up and just bring it a little bit closer to the camera. So you can see my score line, and you can see that I have offset this card just slightly to the right hand side. So now what I have is I've got a three-sided card. Well, we're not going to end just there with that fold. I want to make a triangle folded card. So what I'm going to do is take this corner and I'm going to bring that down, and then use either my thumbnail or my bone folder. Oops, let's do that. That direction is easier. And I've now got a flap, and then I'm going to do exactly the same process on this side, but I'm going to come from the bottom end this time. So I'm going to pull that piece of card up from the bottom corner. Again, use my thumbnail or use the bone folder. Oops, and slightly skew, just straighten that. There we go. And now I've got a card that actually has two triangular folds in it. And you can actually close this card by folding in the one side and then the other side. So all that's left for us to do now is to actually decorate this. So what I've done is I've used balmy blue cardstock. If I move that out of the way just for a second, I've taken one A4 sheet of balmy blue cardstock and I've cut it in half, and then I've cut 3 individual pieces. One is measured at 14 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and I've cut 2 pieces that measure 13.5 centimeters by 10 centimeters. Once you've measured 2 panels like this and 1 panel like that, it's the slightly larger panel that we're going to use to stick in the middle of this triangular fold card. So let's just quickly do that and make sure we get that piece of card out of the way and don't accidentally end up cutting the wrong piece of card a little bit later. So if we just line that up, there we are. So we've stuck that down. And now what we want to do is we want to stick our blue panels on the front, and we want to stick a blue panel on the other front. I'm going to take one of these panels, and if you look at the card on the long side, so in other words, the side that measured 13.5 centimeters, I've taken a pen and I've just marked a tiny notch at 4 centimeters from the bottom. And I've done that on both pieces of card that measure 13.5 by 10 centimeters. The next step is I've taken my cutter, just grabbed a cutter trimmer so I can just demonstrate what I did before cutting it. So I had a notch measured at 4 centimeters from the bottom. I turned the card on the diagonal and I lined it up so that the top corner, in other words there, and my 4 centimeter mark were in line on my cutting line or cutting strip, and then I used my blade and ran it up the paper to then cut it into these two pieces. So do that process and repeat that process twice. The next step is where the excitement comes in using our new embossing folder. So this High Seas embossing folder, if you can actually see through there, has actually got wave-like ruffles. And if you run your paper through this embossing folder, this is the effect that you then create. So you actually are creating the effect of waves. So do that with one of your larger panels. Now that I've done that, I'm going to, before I stick it in here, darken this just ever so slightly. So the ink that I'm working with is a basic grey ink, and I'm using a little finger sponge dauber, which I'm just going to ink up. Make sure that I actually get rid of some of the ink so that it doesn't create a very dark effect. And before I do that, let me make sure I've got this in the right direction. In fact, that's upside down. So I know this is the side I want to be sticking down. So this is the side I'm going to work on. And just where each of these waves are, I'm going to try and sponge some of this grey ink, just to create a little bit of effect and create a little bit of texture on the paper. So we just find all the wavy strips, because what I'm really trying to do here is I'm trying to create the effect of a stormy sea. And we all know that stormy seas can look pretty grey, in fact sometimes almost black, when it's a really angry sea. So you can put as little or as much grey onto this for effect as you want to. I just want to make sure. Whoops, that was a really dark one. Probably a little bit heavy-handed of me there. But it doesn't matter. The fantastic thing with crafting is there's never any right and there's never any wrong. Nobody knows before you create the design what the outcome is that you want to achieve. And when you make a mistake, it's actually not a mistake. It's your creative license. So now that I've sponged that up with a bit of grey, I'm going to actually stick this piece to my front panel. So let's actually just pop some multi-purpose glue on there. And let's stick down our front panel. Try and line that up. Oops, that's a little bit skew. The beauty about multi-purpose glue, as you can see what I'm doing there now, is that when you put it on, you've still got a couple of seconds leeway to move it around if you think that you've stuck something on skew. So now that we've done this panel, we're not quite finished with it, because we'll come back to that in a minute. I now want to actually focus on working on the right side panel. So I'm going to fold that over, and this is where the other blue panel that I cut out, this is 13 by 5 by 10 centimeters, remember, and then we marked it at 4 centimeters, and we cut on the diagonal from the 4 centimeter line down to the bottom corner. I'm going to stick this panel on that side. So let's just glue that. There we go. And now we can actually stick this panel on. Whoops. Is that straight? Oh, I'm never very good at actually getting things lined up very straight, but there you go. That looks pretty straight to me. Okay, so if we have a look at our card now, we've got our one panel in the center, we've got one flap, and we've got another flap. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to start some of my stamping. So the first stamp we're going to use out of the stamp set is we're going to use the lighthouse. So I've pre-mounted the lighthouse and I'm using a black Memento ink. And let's just ink that up. A lot of people often say when you're actually inking up your stamps, it is easier to apply the stamp, the ink to the stamp than it is to take the stamp and press it into the ink. This way you actually have more control, and as you can see, I haven't actually smudged ink all around my stamping block. So I prefer, when it's a larger surface stamp, I prefer to apply my ink pad to the actual stamp. And it's just a light tap, 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 tap motion like that. So now we're going to actually stamp this into roughly 2/3 of that panel. So if I place it there, with stamping, I press down, I hold firmly with one hand while I use my other left hand to just press down on the stamp and make sure I've got a clear image. So I've stamped the lighthouse. And the next thing I want to stamp is I want to stamp a couple of the birds that are one of the other stamps in this set. So this time I'm going to just apply the stamp to the ink. I always like to test if I'm not 100% sure which side up is the correct side up of my stamp. So I can see that's the correct side. I want to place a few there. And how about we place a couple in that corner, I think. Excellent. So we've got our bird stamped. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to stamp some words in the center of the card. And if I have a look at this, I want to be able to use this greeting here. Let hope be your anchor through the storms of life. I just think that is such an encouraging phrase, and it's a card I really would love to send to a friend that needs to just be encouraged at the moment. So I've inked up my stamp and we just stamp the sentiment in the middle. And now that I've got that sentiment stamped, I want to stick my designer paper on these two panels. So my designer paper, I've cut, and this comes out of that beautiful pack that I showed you earlier. I've cut this at size 3 3/4 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And a little bit silly, I suppose, I've worked in two different measurements. I've worked in centimeters and I've worked in inches. So if you want that measurement in centimeters, it's 9.5 centimeters by 9.5 centimeters. So I've cut a square, and then all I've done is turned it diagonally and I've sliced it down the middle. So these two panels are going to decorate the side triangles of the card. So if I take one of these and got myself in a bit of a knot here, we put one on that panel. There we go. And then this one is going to go on the opposite panel. So just quickly ink that up. Goodness, talking of stormy seas, we've had such a lot of rain today, and I'm pretty sure that if you're down at the coast, the storms must be raging at the moment. So it really is probably the right sort of weather to be making this sort of card. Okay, got both my side panels stamped up now, And I said I would actually just leave the measurements visible for you. So if I went a little bit too quickly in terms of the measurements, there they are. So the next step now is I want to decorate these two panels. And I think before I decorate those, I want to try and actually fill up some of this space in the background. So I'm going to use the anchor now, and this time I'm going to use a soft suede ink or a brown, doesn't matter which brown you decide to work with, but I thought I'd use the soft suede. So I'm going to stamp and then stamp off without actually inking up my stamp set again. So you can see I've gone from dark to lighter to really quite light there. I'll do the same thing on this panel. There we go. Oh my goodness, I made a bit of a splotch there. That was a bit of an accident. But as I said, you know what? There aren't any accidents or mistakes in crafting. So I'm the only one that knew there was not meant to be a splotch there, and we're actually going to cover that up with something else just now. Then what I did was I've used the same anchor, and I have actually stamped out onto balmy blue card 2 anchors, and then rather than cutting these out by hand, I have used these wonderful dies and framelits, and they do make life so much easier. So as you can see, there's a whole selection of shapes in here, all of them matching that beautiful stamp set. Here is the anchor, and what I did was I stamped my image onto a piece of paper, I placed the die over it, and I used my die cutting machine to actually cut out the anchors. So to just speed up the process a little bit, I actually pre-cut these before starting the video. So we're just going to pop a little bit of glue on them so we can actually get them to stick. There we go. And we'll pop one. Let's pop it in this corner at an angle. There we go. And then I'm going to take the other one, and let's just ink that one up a little bit. There we go. Oops, let's just put a little bit on the top corner, and I'm going to actually place that one on the opposite panel. Right. Now, what I'd also like to do is I'd like to actually create a little bit more character in that inside panel. So I'm going to use one of the boats. There are 2 sized boats here, the large one and the little one. I'm going to actually take the large one. And again, using my green ink pad, I think I'm going to place it in this bottom corner. There. And then I'm probably going to fill my sky with some birds. So let me just clean this stamp set off quickly, because I want to use the grey to actually put some birds onto this panel. So I'm using my grey ink again, inking up the birds. And let's check the direction they're going. All right, birds upside down. So I know I need them that way. Okay. And I'm going to just put a few over that. So it really is hardly noticeable that I actually had a splotch of ink there. And I'm going to pop some up in that corner there, I think. So that's just added another little bit of character to the inside of our card. Now, to finish off these outer panels, I have decided I'd like to first create a little bit more of a mood in the background, given that it is a stormy day. So I'm going back to my grey ink. Let's just check it is the grey. Yes, it was the grey. And just like I did the sponging before, I'm now going to just run my sponge over the background. Just to create more of a dark mood. Dark, stormy mood. There we go. Okay. So that's given it more of a mood, I think. What I'd like to do next is I'd like to highlight that the lighthouse really does stand out. So I'm taking a jelly pen, a white jelly pen, and I'm actually just going to colour the white bits of my lighthouse where the light would be radiating from. There we go. And I'm also now going to use the white Jello pen to create some more mood and effect on my waves. Anybody that's lived at the coast knows that in stormy weather there are always white horses that ride the waves. So using my white Jello pen and just actually pulling out sections of the waves, not all of them, but just here and there. And you don't have to be accurate, because remember, water is constantly moving and foaming and frothing. And when it's a stormy sea, my goodness me, you will see hundreds, in fact, no, thousands of white horses riding the ocean. So let's just finish off a few more here. There we go. That just lifts the front and hopefully gives us more of an effect of having a stormy sea. And you can put as little or as many on here as you want to. Okay, and then the last item I want to add is I'm going to use the large boat stamp again, and this time I'm going to stamp it on a piece of Sahara sand card using my brown ink and cut it out with the framelits. So remember I showed you that these framelits, there was an incredible variety here. That's the large boat. So I've used that large boat framelit to cut this boat out. And then to stick that onto my card, I'm going to use a few dimensionals. So let's just pop some dimensionals on the back of the boat so that we can actually just, I'll use a smaller little strip, otherwise it'll be poking out at the bottom there. I don't know if you ever do this actually, just cut up your dimensionals to the sizes that you need them. They can be pretty useful so that it doesn't poke through or poke out on the sides. So if we just remove all these little sticky tabs, there we go. And I'm now going to place, oops, one of the dimensional bits. Remember, it's a stormy sea, so this boat is rocking. So I'm going to place my boat at an angle. And now to finish off the card, there's one step that's still missing, I think. Wonder if you can guess what it is. I looked at this and I thought, well, first of all, I want to colour the boat in. I want to colour the sails just to lift that boat a little bit. So I'm using one of the Stampin blend pens, and I've taken the light soft sea foam. And I'm using the finer nib because I just find that gives me more control. So let's just colour in these sails. There we go. Just add a bit of colour to it. Not sure that I should have coloured that tiny little strip in the middle, because that might actually have been a piece of the skyline. But hey, it doesn't matter, does it? There we go. So that just adds a little bit of colour to the boat. And now, I don't think that looks quite finished. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to stamp out the words again. So where are my words? There we are. Let hope be your anchor through the storms of life. So I've stamped it on a piece of the balmy blue card. And, oops, I'm going to just quickly run this through the big shot, and in order to cut that out, I have decided to use the framelit. That's still part of the same set, and I normally use a piece of washi tape like this just to hold my framelit in place, even though I've got a magnetic plate underneath there. So let's just run that through. There we go. And you can see how well worn my cutting plates are. These have been going forever, actually. It just shows how long they last. They go on and on and on and on. So that's the last label that I want. So the final step now is I'm going to place that label on the card. So I need to glue, just make sure I'm going to glue the right section of it. I think I'm going to glue that piece there. So if we just put a little bit of multi-purpose glue on that end, and then we can place this where we like. There we go. There we are. That's our finished card. If you open it up, you've got decorative pieces inside. And if you close it up, there we are. Well, I really hope you like that. I'm not quite sure if I've turned that upside down now or not. But if you open it up, I don't know if you could see, it stands any number of ways when it's opened up. Probably not the best video to actually demonstrate what it looks like when it stands up, but I do hope you like that. I hope you've been able to also get down the different measurements of the different pieces of card that I used. And if you actually want to follow me, I have a Facebook page called DianneRichardsonCraft, and I have a website, DianneRichardsonCraft.stampingup.net. Hope you enjoyed the video and look forward to seeing you join me again next time.